From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Positively Kansas.
It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, lives in crisis get more help as homelessness in Wichita seems to spiral out of control. Also, we visit a true jewel on the plains. You'll see why this majestic country church attracts those who appreciate faith as well as history. And as long as there have been shoes, there have been cobblers. We'll take a look at this timeless art as it's practiced right here in Kansas. I'm Sierra Scott. Join us for a half hour of information and inspiration on this edition of Positively Kansas. Imagine not knowing where you'll sleep tonight or where you'll get your next meal. It's not a problem for most of us, but for a record number of Americans, it's a daily reality. In Wichita, local efforts are underway to adjust strategies and step up efforts to provide relief for those with nowhere to live. Chris Frank reports.
Thanks, Megan.
Salvation Army worker Eric Nerheim's job has him heading to the streets of Wichita.
So we go where people are at.
Nerheim served his country in the U.S. Navy for 22 years. Now he's part of a Salvation Army team helping homeless veterans with services to get them housing and hopefully able to sustain themselves again.
Downtown Wichita, there's some locations that are available for homeless.
Nerheim is the veteran coordinator for the Supportive Services for Veteran Families.
It's a program designed to help individuals that are prior veterans or prior military service, so veterans, help them with either rapid rehousing.
It's a nationwide, federally funded program through the Veterans Administration. The VA awards grants to Wichita Salvation Army to run supportive services for veteran families in the central region of Kansas.
We're not just going to give you a home that's empty.
There is help to furnish their home. The goal is to help the veteran to make it on their own again.
As soon as we're gone, then we need to make sure they're going to be successful when we leave.
Wendetta Williams is one of the hundreds of veterans helped through the program. The Salvation Army's rapid rehousing work helped the Navy veteran get into this apartment nearly a year ago.
At that time, I was in a very difficult relationship where I had to leave it.
Williams is working with a Salvation Army caseworker who helped her with the housing, getting a new job, and with a pathway to independence.
That has a huge impact, and I thank God all the time. And
Williams was referred to the Salvation Army through a temporary shelter she was in, an example of help agencies working together to get veterans needed help.
There's people that live behind in some of our wooded areas.
Meanwhile, Nerheim regularly searches out veterans among the many homeless encampments around the city.
We go under the bridges, we go into the places, and there are places all around Wichita. To be honest with you, I honestly would never have known the need there is until I started this position.
Bridges crossed by thousands daily often hide encampments like this.
This is just one location that we come to, and there's oftentimes where there's some veterans here. But they're all over the city. It's not just isolated in one place. So this is just one example of some of the places that we come when we do an outreach check. And
an eviction notice from the city means these campers will likely be on the move again.
There's a tent right over here if you just look, just right here along the path.
Wichita's homeless are all around us. Sometimes they are in plain sight in downtown areas. Other times they might be hidden in wooded areas like this, in encampments.
Hello, Salvation Army.
But the Salvation Army tries to find the veterans amongst them.
Salvation Army.
To see how they might help them.
We're looking for veterans today. You happen to know any veterans in the area?
Nerheim hears of a potential lead to search out.
Okay.
He says the supportive services for veteran families has helped 484 households in the 2023-2024 grant period throughout the state of Kansas. Help is available, but not all want it.
So actually there was specifically one veteran, he didn't want to be housed. He actually wanted to stay here.
Nurheim defines program success.
Successful is somebody that is able to reintegrate back into normal living and having the home and having the facilities they need to be able to live a life like a lot of us do.
It is the same goal other agency workers strive for as they too try to extend help to the homeless.
Today we're going to be taking you on a quick tour of the Emergency Winter Shelter, which is also phase 1 of the Multi-Agency Center.
It is a quick tour for Wichita media outlets to see the new Emergency Winter Shelter at the former Park Elementary School. A quick tour because this tour day is only 2 days away from the shelter's opening. Those involved want the homeless to have shelter from the expected coming frigid weather.
Every individual will be walking through the door and they will have to go through the metal detector.
No.
Davis says security is important at the emergency homeless shelter. The shelter will be staffed with security around the clock.
Every individual that comes in will have an opportunity to bring in one bag and then fill one tote.
Their belongings, she says, will be checked for things not allowed here.
To make sure there are no drugs or weapons that will be coming in and just to ensure the safety in this area.
Posters throughout the shelter list banned items and list things that can get a person turned away from here.
Once this emergency winter shelter opens, we will not have to reopen it again. This will remain a 24/7, 365 shelter. This is the largest shelter capacity that Wichita has ever had.
It replaces the emergency shelter at 21st and Grove of the previous winter, which stirred up neighborhood objections.
So right now we have capacity to sleep 266 individuals in the 3 sleeping areas. That includes the men's area at 128, the women's at 72, and the flex space at 66.
She says beds become available starting at 9 p.m. There is an 11 p.m. deadline to get entrance into a sleeping area.
At 11 o'clock, it's lights out.
Late arrivals must stay in the intake receiving area. That's where information on new arrivals is taken. It's a sort of triage area to ascertain the needs of those coming off the streets. Restroom and shower trailers have been added outdoors to meet the greater needs.
And 2, if somebody comes in and they may be having some issues with bed bugs or body lice, we can bring them in here, we can isolate them and have them bag up all their clothing, completely shower using whatever product is needed to take care of what's going on with them and minimize the exposure in the rest of our facility.
Emergency clothing will also be available. All of this is seen as a 3-part project. This first emergency shelter opening represents Project 1. Project 2 will be the build-out of the larger MAC, short for Multi-Agency Center.
The City of Wichita had taken on the effort to create the Multi-Agency Center, and which is also known as the MAC.
MAC Inc. is the new nonprofit agency created to oversee all the wraparound services.
Once this multi-agency center is completely framed out or built out, we will be able to create warm handoffs from one agency to the other for individuals coming in and seeking services.
Project 2 involves remodeling the 2-story building portion. Social service agencies will operate from there, offering help for such things as substance abuse and mental health issues.
We are not experts in mental wellness, in substance use, in all those other areas, and so we have to have those collaborating agencies there to help support those individuals that we're serving. If we don't have that, it's going to become a cyclical cycle.
Then there will be a third component involving a separate housing project.
When we say a housing project, a building, right now we're anticipating probably 3 floors, 25 units per floor for a total of about 75 units. To help in the transition, our ultimate goal is to try to achieve functional net zero when it comes to homelessness.
Net zero, he says, means more people coming out of homelessness than those going in. Anderson says the full build-out for Project 2 will require $6 to $6.5 million.
Shelter does not solve homelessness. Housing solves homelessness. So this is just the first step. We have lots of plans and desires to build more affordable housing around the community because homelessness is a housing problem.
Shepler says people are homeless for a lot of different reasons. It can be trauma, mental illness, substance abuse, domestic violence, and joblessness.
And that's what makes it even harder because it's not the same cookie cutter with every person. You have to work with that individual to determine what those barriers are and help eliminate those barriers so they feel comfortable enough to move to that next level of stability.
She says the hope is to have what she calls a wraparound service for homeless individuals. The MAC will have case managers with their own various skills to try to meet the needs of the homeless and hopefully be able to get more of the homeless in sustainable housing situations.
This is housing focused. Housing focused shelter is important. This is not meant to be just a place for people to stay. It's a place where people can connect to housing and to the other resources that they need for whatever their barrier or their issue is in their life.
But this shelter, she says, is a needed big first step. This is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
Each year, the United Way of the Plains enlists volunteers to do a homeless count. The past few years, the number has hovered right around the 700 just in Wichita alone. Faith can play a big role in helping us overcome life's challenges. In the tiny community of St. Benedict, church is literally at the center of everything. And what an amazing church it is, as Jim Grayway shows us.
In far northeast Kansas, St. Mary's Church serves as a lasting testament to the timeless powers of faith, community, and Kansas ingenuity.
It was either planned out or it was a miracle to have it happen like it did.
The tiny village of St. Benedict was built around a Catholic congregation that formed in 1859. It was called St. Mary's Parish, and it outgrew 3 church buildings over the next 30 years. Then by 1889, the parish had grown to 120 families whose farms had prospered in the rich Kansas soil. The congregation resolved to honor God with one more house of worship that would endure for generations.
Their faith was central to them, and their thought was it should be a place deserving of worship for their Creator. I think they patterned the design of this church after churches that they had been, some of the original pioneer families were familiar with in Europe, particularly Germany and Ireland.
Church members poured their money and their sweat into this, with each family pledging support. They themselves hauled 1,200 cords of rock, that's almost 154,000 cubic feet, 2.5 miles from the local quarry.
People had physical skills and they pitched in and they were stakeholders. It was a barn raising in many cases, and this was a church raising.
What they couldn't do themselves, they hired out to some of the world's finest artists and craftsmen. Upon its dedication, a writer for the Seneca Courier-Tribune declared this to be one of the largest church buildings in the state and will compare with the best churches in the West. And it was built to last.
It's amazing that you can stand rock up into the air 170 feet in 1889 and it's still there.
Towering above the quiet rural landscape, the exterior looks clean and symmetrical. The $40,000 spent to construct the building is equivalent to $1.25 million today. Another $40,000 was spent over time to create an interior that is colorful, intricate, sophisticated, and many would say ethereal. It continues to wow people more than a century later, attracting both the faithful and the curious.
Most of them stop in the center aisle and go, ah.
Very beautiful interior, astonishingly beautiful.
The many statues were imported from Italy and Bavaria. 13 large oil paintings are the work of a Ukrainian immigrant who was the former emissary to the Tsar of Russia. The complex stencil designs are the work of prolific and renowned church artist G.F. Satori.
He did about 150 buildings, but this is apparently the only one left that still has his stencil work.
A full interior restoration in the 1980s painstakingly refreshed and restored the sanctuary's color and brilliance and original design. Every angle provides a feast for the eyes and nutrition for the soul.
It helps your state of mind to focus on higher things in a beautiful place.
St. Mary's devoted congregation remains committed to keeping the church in impeccable condition. Visitors are always welcome.
It's a sort of a hidden jewel out in the middle of nowhere. It's not to be a museum, it's not a show place, but it has helped lots of people understand and better appreciate what their ancestors have provided and how hard they worked at it. And if we can't maintain that, then of what value is today's society?
St. Mary's Church in St. Benedict is one of the many places featured in the PBS Kansas documentary series, Historic Buildings of Kansas. DVDs of the program are available to order at kpts.org or by calling the station during regular business hours. If your soul needs mending, church may be the place to go, or maybe you just need a good cobbler. They're not easy to find anymore, but Chris Frank found one. Take a look.
The stitching's pulled out, but I think the leather's okay. And then I figured I would see if you guys could just clean and polish them up. This one.
Leah Condon values her horseback riding boots.
They're 4 years old, so if I can keep them going a little longer, it's definitely worth it to me.
Buying a new pair, she says, would cost her a few $100s. Condon is the type of customer that keeps the Jack Smith shoe repair shop in southeast Wichita open. Shoe repair shops like this one are dying out across the country and right here in Wichita.
When I first came back to Wichita, I think there were like 20 shoe shops that were still going strong. But as they aged and China started making more shoes for the U.S. and shipping them over, people started doing less shoe repair and buying new.
He says he returned to Wichita in 1987. Woods grew up around cowboys in the Clearwater and Hayesville areas. After college, he taught school for a year. That changed when he discovered a shoe repair shop for sale.
So I went and bought it.
And he's never looked back to change his career path. He did change locations, however. That first shop was in Guyman in the lonely Oklahoma Panhandle.
Yeah, it was a small town, but it was cowboy country, and I learned fast about how to fix saddles, boots, and everything else.
He returned to Wichita and went to work with Jack Smith.
Jack Smith Shoe Shop has been in business probably since 1960. And I joined the company in '87, and then I bought it in 2000. And so I just left it as the same name, Jack Smith Shoe Shop, because I helped him build a business, and it had an extremely good name. I didn't want to change anything.
Although he didn't want to change anything, changes came as people purchased cheaper, non-leather imported shoes. Shoes made of synthetic materials are more difficult to repair than leather shoes. Those factors brought changes to shoe repair shops like this one.
Just the difference in shoes, how they're made, quality, but still a need.
One of Woods' 2 employees, Richard Clark, has been around the shoe repair business 40 years. He owned and operated his own shop before coming here. So he's seen and handled thousands of shoes, repairing and replacing soles.
If the upper is good, they're comfortable, they fit, we can put a new bottom on there and make them as good as new, or if not better.
Clark's amazed at how few shoe repair shops remain. The Shoe Service Institute of America reports shoe repair shops have dwindled from more than 100,000 in the 1930s to fewer than 5,000 today. Woods estimates there were 25 to 30 shops in Wichita in the 1960s.
And they've just kind of dwindled away and disappeared, and before we knew it, we were down to 5, down to 2, and now we're at 2.
These are old rock forts?
Oh, yeah.
And need soles. Do you do that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
as long as customers like Daryl Roberts need soles replaced, there will be work for the store.
When you find a pair of shoes that fits, you hate to go to a different brand. These have been good.
Woods says some shops died off because all they wanted to do was replace soles and heels.
They seem to just fade away. I've found that it's not an easy business, and if you're not willing to do everything that they bring in, business will start to drop off. And I think a lot of them was not interested in doing anything but soles and heels, which is the neutral part of the business. But I learned that you've got to do purses, coats, sandals, anything they bring in, we try to fix.
Woods acknowledges it can be difficult to train new people to do the work.
Very seldom we have anyone passing through that's interested in learning the business, and it's such a fast-paced business. It's hard to train someone that isn't a self-starter and wants to teach themselves.
22-year-old Yamilet Anali had been working in the shop for only a month.
Touching it up.
She's learning the trade, which can be anything from repairing a sole to touch-up painting of stylish heels.
I've learned how to paint. I learned how to stretch shoes out. Currently, this one that I just stretched. I learned how to unstitch the stitching from boots and stuff. I've learned how to price things. I've learned how to sew. I've learned a lot of things from both Keith and Rick.
So it's down to 2 in Wichita, including the Cowboy Boot Shop in West Wichita. Woods says this shop gets plenty of work.
Oh, we're loaded down. Yeah, we've got tons of work. We really do. We're not limited, we're not short of having something to do.
So even though shoe repair shops continue to fade away in America, this shop has so much work to do, closing is not in their sights for a long time to come. For Positively Kansas, this is Chris Frank reporting.
According to an industry research group, there were more than 100,000 shoe repair businesses in the United States in 1930. Now, there are just over 3,000. Now to the wild side of Kansas life and a confrontation that photojournalist Mike Blair caught on camera. It's in tonight's Kansas Wild Edge Report.
Old Coon Dog was a buck just old enough and big enough that he considered himself boss of these parts. And when I put out waste corn at a bait site, he naturally laid claim to the food. I used a trail camera to record all the action, day and night, when I wasn't there. The video was low resolution and somewhat grainy, but it provided a fascinating eye on the outdoors you couldn't get any other way. Anyway, old Coon Dog would share when there was plenty. But if supplies ran low, everyone knew to give him first dibs. That is, everyone except those pesky raccoons, sometimes as many as 26 that hit the chow each night. And they could put that corn away. Other deer pretty much tried to get along, but not Coon Dog. He always had an attitude, and he didn't like any challenge to his authority. He'd strut around even when no one else was there. And you could see it was best not to mess with him. He'd mark the corn pile as his own territory, pawing out a bare spot in the dirt and then peeing across his hawk glands to leave his own special scent. If he joined a party, you'd better make room. A month back, before the rut or deer mating season was close, he was gentler in his warnings. He'd make eye contact with his smaller rivals, stepping forward as a reminder he was 15 times their size. But as November approached and fighting urges grew, he upped the ante. He'd threaten a powerful kick that could land like a hammer blow. And the raccoons wisely moved away. But those antlers on Coon Dog's head weren't just decorations, and finally he got real about teaching indifferent coons a lesson. Ouch! This was more serious than it looked, since sharp antler tips were easily capable of opening deep wounds. In fact, rival bucks could be killed by such weapons in a serious fight. Some of these food skirmishes no doubt led to injuries, especially when a raccoon was hit hard enough to roll it across the ground. At the end, the smart ones knew to stay out of harm's way. And lately, they create a polite space when Coon Dog comes to dine. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
That's a wrap for this week. Positively Kansas at kpts.org is our email address if you have a question or story idea. I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.